How you doing? Mr. DJ's back. Glad to be back. Took a few nights off, indulging in some of my other projects related to music, and so back on video channel, 80s and 90s video channel, at least for tonight, as continue to count down this fantasy playlist of October 1st, 1995, 22 years ago. And at number 34, last debut on this fantasy playlist. And by the way, boy, I got some gems on here. Some of these songs I've forgotten about. I got one by REM coming up. Solo, they had that hit, Where Do You Put It or something like that in 1995. And Lisa Loeb or Loeb, Do You Sleep? God, that was a lovely record. And Bush, Paula Abdul. Yes, she's coming up. But at number 34, we got the Rembrandts. This House Is Not a Home. This record got the jangly guitars. I'm thinking Tom Petty, but I'm trying to think of another group that had a similar sound. Maybe like somebody like Marshall Crenshaw back in the early 80s when he did Someday, Some Way. But Rembrandt's This House Is Not a Home, which was the runner-up to I'll Be There For You, which was from the Friends TV show, the soundtrack. That song did extremely well. That song probably put the Rembrandts on the map more than anything else. But they had been in the music business for years, these two guys, before the 90s. Phil Solemn, I'll just pronounce it as Solemn, and Danny Wilde, Wilde, I'll pronounce it as Wild. They formed the Rembrandts in 1989, but they've been together long before that. They were actually in a band called Great Building back in the early 80s, these two guys together. They put out one album for CBS, but that was it. Might not have even been released, but they had that one album back in 1981. And before that, Danny Wilde, he was in a cult band. It was called The Quick back in the 70s. So we're talking about some rock and roll veterans. It's only rock and roll, but I like it. Yes, you do. Yes, I do. You probably do too. Anyway, that first album was self-titled, Just the Way It Is, Baby. Remember that, late 1990, early 1991. It's from their self-titled album. That song was recorded at Danny Wilde's home studio, his own home studio. And 1992 rather, came untitled. I do remember this one, Johnny, Have You Seen Her? But it was not a very big hit for them. And then, of course, the Friends TV show came out in 1994. God, I never watched an episode of Friends. But boy, loads of people back in the 90s and 2000s, boy, they were into that show. That was one of the longest running shows. How long did that show run? About 10 years. I remember when I got into Full House about back in 2000s, watching the reruns of Full House. And Full House, it lasted for about 8 years, but Friends lasted longer than that. 10, 11 years, something like that, maybe longer than that. Well, anyway, they did this song, I'll Be There For You. The Rembrandts did. That was a great pop single. Only got as high as number 17 on Billboard's Hot 100. Now, number 17 is respectable, but a song like that, that's number 1, 2, or 3. Did go to number 3 in England in 1995, and it was re-released in 1997 in England, and it promptly returned to the top 10 with the number 5. But could not find out any information on this record, This House Is Not a Home by the Rembrandts. Nice video, though, to go with the record, go with the song, and it's at number 34 on my fantasy playlist, October 1st, 1995.